This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome Rabbi Yahrtzeit. Today is Tes Iyer. Tes Iyer, you ask, what is Tes Iyer? I never heard of Tes Iyer. Let me tell you. Tes Iyer is the Yahrtzeit of one of the Rishonim. But I venture to say this is a Rishon that nobody here heard of. His name was Rav Avigdor Kara. Rav Avigdor Kara, who was nifter in Prague in Bohemia in 1439 on the 9th day of Iyer, 5199. He was a Talmudist, a Makubal, and a liturgist. Say, what did he write? Probably the most well-known composition of Rav Avigdor Kara is the liturgy, the poem Echad, Yachid, Umyuchad. Anyone here ever hear Echad, Yachid, Umyuchad? It became a Chassidish Shenegin. It was actually written by one of the Rishonim. Echad, Yachid, Umyuchad, Haya. No. Anyway, that was written by Rav Avigdor Kara. He would often have conversations with King Wenceslaus of Bohemia, and he was a chazan. And his song Echad, Yachid, Umyuchad is sung in many communities. There's certain Chassidisim that they pelt the bridegroom with nuts and candies at the end of his aliyah, and they sing Echad Yachid U Meyuchad. Yeah. Anyway, he also wrote something called a liturgy called Boiker Tishma Koili, Hashem Kelemes, and Es Kol Hatala'a. Where Es Kol Hatala'a is actually a slicha for the persecution and slaughter of Jews in Prague in 1389. He wrote a commentary on the Torah. He wrote Shalos Teshuvos. He wrote Kodesh Hilulim, and none of them are published. Now, here's where it gets interesting. There's a Sefer called Sefer Hakana. Sefer Hakana is a very Kabbalistic Sefer. Some ascribe that Rabbi Avigdor Kara is the author of Sefer Hakana. Now, some say Sefer Hakana was written by Reb Nechunya ben Hakana, one of the Tanoim, and others say no, it was written by Rabbi Avigdor Kara, one of the Rishonim. Also, there's something called Sefer Hapliah, which is also sometimes known as Sefer Hakana, which is a Perush on Bereshis. So if you want to know about a Sefer and who wrote the Sefer, where do you look? In the Shem HaGdolim of the Chida. So in the Mareches Gedolim of the Chida, on Avigdor Kara of Prague, he says, look later on in Mareches Svarim, right? Because the Shem HaGdolim has two parts. It has the section on all the Gedolei Yisrael that preceded the Chida, and he has a section on all the Svarim that were written before him. So he says, look by Sefer Hapliah. So let me read to you what he says by Sefer Hapliah. Says the Chida, what's Sefer Hapliah? The Mefarshei HaTorah Mirabbanei Ashkenaz, the commentaries of German descent, Meviim Ma'amorim Temuim, they bring enigmatic statements, Umatu Bahu Mishum Pliah, V'oilim V'yardim Bai, and they debate, what does this mean? For example, it's like Medrash Pliah. You have these very enigmatic statements of the Medrash that are almost impossible to explain. For example, there's a Medrash Pliah, Hadudaim Nasnu Reach, right? It has something to do with Ner Chanukah. Hadudaim Nasnu Reach, alcohol. So different midrashim that are almost inexplicable. Now, who wrote the Sefer Pliah? So interesting, if you look in the Ramami Pano, in the Maimar Im Kol Chai Chilek Aleph Siman Yud Zayin, he says, Kasav b'Sefer Tamei HaMitzvos Likaneh. If you look in the Sefer Tamei HaMitzvos of the Kaneh, that was compiled by Avigdor Bal Hapliah. So the Ramami Pano seems to say that the author of the Sefer HaKaneh was none other than Avigdor Kara. However, in the introduction to the Megala Amukos, he says no, that the Sefer HaKaneh was written by Reb Nechunya, or the Pliah was written by Reb Nechunya. Nechunya is Gematria Pliah. So, in all probability, Reb Avigdor Kara was related to Reb Yosef Karo. They have the same name, Kara as in master of the written text, master of the Chumash. So I have a Sefer. It's actually a book that I got recently. It's called the Old Jewish Cemetery of Prague. And the oldest kever in the cemetery in Prague is the kever of Avigdor Kara. It is the oldest kever in the entire cemetery. And it's an ancient cemetery. So we mentioned that he was nifter in 1439. I actually have a picture of his kever over here. This is... So the problem is, in this picture, you cannot read the Matseva at all. And that's because Prague was hit very hard by acid rain. Well, many cemeteries are affected by it. But over the years, it's been completely rubbed out. So my dear friend, Rabbi Schwartz from Norfolk, Virginia, got a hold of a very important sefer for me. I said, let's see, could we try to get a hold of a sefer called Galed? Galed is the nusach of all the matzevos in the city of Prague. Wow. Now, it's not the picture of the kever. It's the original text in Bohemian and in Lashon HaKodesh.
When was it written?
Galed was, this is a facsimile edition. When was this put together?
Obviously, it had to be written when the Matzeva was still legible.
It was printed the first time in Prague, Tuf Reish Tes Zayin. So we're talking 1857. 1857. And lo and behold, I opened it up. The second kever that it speaks about, and it has a nusach of, is Rav Avigdor Kara. So I'll read to you what it says in the Matzeva. So we have both the picture of the Matzeva and the original text of the Matzeva. It says, Kan Nignaz Ha'ish Hamaskel. Here is buried the sagacious man, the wise man, Shir Yedidim. Song of friends, Haloi Me Torah Im Rabbim V'Mechidim, who taught Torah to the public and to individuals. Baki Haya B'Torah. He was proficient in the Torah. B'chol Sifrei HaChachma, in all books of wisdom. Uv'Sifrei HaMikra, in all books of Chumash. Mareno Rab Avigdor Kara, ben Rab Yitzchak Kara. Nasli Panim Haya Ba'ama, he was received favorably by his people. Niftar V'halach La'ilamai. If you want to know how do I know it's his Yahrtzeit today, it says it on his kever. Niftar V'halach La'ilamai B'Shabbos Tes B'Iyar. He was niftar on a Shabbos, on Tes Iyar. The Gemara in Kesubah says that if somebody passes away on Shabbos, he goes L'menucha miyad. It's a siman tov. V'nikvar b'yom aleph. He was buried on Sunday. Yud Iyar. Tzedakah. What does tzedakah mean? Tzedakah means charity. We know what it means. Well, why is it written tzedakah on his kever? Tzedakah is gematria 199. What year is the year 199? 1339. Right? So tzedakah is 199. The only thing is, right, what's the gematria of tzedakah?
199.
Right. The problem is, but he was nifted in 1439, not 13. The answer, this is the Hebrew date. 199. In other words, 5199. We take out the hay, and he was nifted in the year tzedakah of the 6th millennia, 5199. Hayitztak dinoi, his judgment was found righteous. Kinis bakish l'ma'inoi, he was sought out by the Shamayim nishmasa ba'ilam abad tehei zechura. His soul should be remembered in the world to come. Uv'tzrar hachayim nafshay tehei tzerura tehei nishmasai b'tzrar hachayim. Amen, amen, amen. Sela, sela, sela.
This was all on the Matzeva?
This is all on the Matzeva, and this is recorded in the Sefer Galed of the Matzeva of the ancient cemetery. So today is the Yahrtzeit of Rabbi Avigdor Kara, and his Neshama Shem Aliyah. She will mail it for all of Klal Yisrael. Shkayach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.